What does it feel like to crawl through the dark, cold depths of a cave where every twist and turn could be your last? What if the narrow passage you squeeze into suddenly becomes your prison with no way to turn back? In this video, we uncover the chilling, true story of a daring Scoutmaster, Don Weltner, who entered Crooked Swamp Cave for a simple game of hide and seek and never came out alive. What went so terribly wrong deep beneath the earth? As rescuers raced against time to save him, the cave itself seemed to fight back. Let's unravel the mystery of one of New Jersey's most tragic cave explorations. You will never look at caves the same way again. Welcome to the fascinating world of Crooked Swamp Cave, New Jersey's longest and deepest cave. Tucked away in Lafayette, New Jersey, this cave offers a thrilling journey beneath the Earth's surface. It stretches over 1,250 feet, winding through narrow limestone passageways that have been shaped by natural springs over thousands of years. The cave lies within a vast marsh complex known as Crooked Swamp, part of the Pollenskill River headwaters, which serves as a critical habitat for diverse plant and animal species, including the endangered bog turtle and the state-threatened long-tail salamander. The Crooked Swamp marshland is teeming with life. It's not just the cave that draws attention, but the entire ecosystem surrounding it. Visitors may spot a great blue heron rookery, which is home to many of these majestic birds. Above ground, the swamp is fed by numerous springs, and below, these same waters have been working slowly but steadily, dissolving the limestone bedrock to create the intricate cave system we see today. This process is known as karst formation, a geological phenomenon where water erodes soluble rock, creating underground caves and sinkholes. Crooked Swamp Cave is more than just a natural wonder. It is an adventurous challenge for experienced cave explorers, or splunkers. This cave is narrow and can be quite demanding, requiring both skill and courage. If you've ever dreamed of squeezing through dark passages and marveling at underground formations, this cave offers an experience like no other. However, it is not for the faint of heart. Spelunkophobia, the fear of caves, might keep some people above ground. And it is worth noting that the darkness of the cave can intensify nyctophobia, which is the fear of the dark. In fact, exploring Crooked Swamp Cave is so challenging that access is strictly controlled. Visitors who want to explore its hidden depths must first contact the New Jersey Cave Conservancy to arrange a guided tour. These tours are only available to those with prior splunking experience, and it is highly recommended to join a recognized caving organization. Safety is a top priority, and strict guidelines ensure that exploration remains as safe as possible. The land surrounding the cave was donated to the New Jersey Natural Lands Trust, and the cave is now managed with the help of the New Jersey Cave Conservancy. Today, Crooked Swamp Cave remains an important geological and ecological treasure. It showcases the slow power of nature's forces and the delicate balance between adventure and conservation. Public access is limited to protect both the cave and the people exploring it. But for those who are qualified, it offers a once-in-a-lifetime experience. On Saturday, March 27, 1982, a group of excited Boy Scouts from Troop 116 in Millstone Township, New Jersey, set out on an exciting adventure to Crooked Swamp Cave in Sussex County. This trip was not just a fun outing, it was a chance to explore the longest cave in the state. The Scouts were excited and ready to experience the dark, winding passages of the famous cave. Their caving guide was Jim Ewan, a highly experienced caver with over 30 years of exploring caves. However, on this particular day, Ewan wasn't feeling well because he had a bad cold. As a result, he stayed outside the cave to supervise from a distance. Despite this setback, the group felt confident because they were being led by Donald G. Weltner, a 48-year-old New Jersey state trooper and the bus driver for the trip. Although Weltner had limited caving experience, he had only explored Chauffeur's Cave in Pennsylvania before, he was in excellent physical shape. He was 5 foot 11 inches tall, he weighed 160 pounds, and he was known for his strength and dedication. Before entering the cave, the group gathered to review maps and talk about the cave's layout. They discussed areas that could be tricky or dangerous and planned how to avoid them. This was an important step because Crooked Swamp Cave is known for its narrow, twisting passages. The group included 16 scouts, aged 11 to 16, and about half of them had caving experience from exploring Chauffeur's Cave. 2 other adults also joined the group, but they had no experience with caving. Nevertheless, everyone was excited as they prepared to enter the cave, unaware of the challenges and surprises that awaited them underground. This trip was meant to be a thrilling exploration of one of New Jersey's hidden treasures, and the scouts were ready for an unforgettable adventure. Weltner dressed in a long-sleeve shirt, pants, and rubber-soled boots. Weltner was ready for an exciting day of exploration. His helmet had a chin strap, but unlike most experienced cavers, he didn't have a mounted light. Instead, he carried only a handheld flashlight as his main source of light. Nevertheless, the group was prepared for adventure, unaware of the dangerous turn that their day would soon take. The cave itself is a maze of narrow passages and sharp, jagged walls. There are 7 entrances, but only 6 are accessible. The cave's layout is like a horizontal web of tight crawlways lying just a few feet beneath the surface. Some of the passages are so narrow and uneven that navigating between entrances is nearly impossible. The cold, damp air inside the cave made it even more difficult. Though the cave's usual temperature hovers at around 55 to 57 degrees Fahrenheit, it felt much colder due to cool weather and the constant movement of air through the shallow passages. After a morning of exploration, the group gathered outside the cave for lunch. Spirits were high as someone proposed a game to make the day even more thrilling. A manhunt inside the cave, with ice cream as the prize. 3 scouts volunteered to enter first, choosing any entrance they liked to hide and evade the others. After a 10-minute head start, the rest of the group, including Weltner, would follow in pursuit. It was supposed to be a fun, exciting challenge. Weltner entered the cave with his 2 sons and another scout. They chose an entrance near Tree Root Cave, a part of the cave system that was marked on the map by dotted lines, meaning it was only partially explored or known to be dangerous. Despite knowing this, Weltner decided to push ahead and try to navigate the passage. At around 3 p.m., something went terribly wrong. Weltner entered a narrow, body-sized crevice. The passage was shaped like a keyhole, slightly wider at the top with a narrow slot at the bottom. As he attempted to squeeze through, he slipped off a small ledge and became wedged at the bottom of the narrow passage. The space was only about 7 to 8 inches wide and a couple of feet high. His head was tilted downward, and his feet pointed upwards, an extremely dangerous position. Now at first, Weltner did not admit he was stuck, perhaps thinking he could free himself. But soon it became clear that he was firmly wedged, unable to move forward or backward. His group tried to help, but the passage was so tight that reaching him was nearly impossible. Only a small person could reach him from the Tree Root Cave side, and even then it was difficult to get close enough to help. By 3:20 p.m., most of the other scouts had left the cave, cold and tired from the chilly air. One adult, who had been waiting outside, entered the cave and discovered the dire situation. Weltner was trapped, and the group quickly retrieved a rope to try to pull him free. They looped the rope around his feet and pulled with all of their strength, but it didn't work. Weltner remained stuck, wedged tightly in the narrow crevice. Time was running out, and the cold was getting worse. By 4:50 p.m., one of the scouts managed to hold Weltner's feet, helping him move a little bit, but it wasn't enough. His pants got caught on the rocks and he was stuck again. Even worse, the cold was starting to affect him. He started to talk in a strange way, a sign of hypothermia. His body was getting colder, and his situation was getting more dangerous every minute. The group thought about trying to lever him up using a board, but they couldn't find anything suitable in the cave. Panic set in as they realized that they were running out of options. Weltner was slipping deeper into hypothermia, and the narrow, jagged passage seemed more like a trap with every passing second. The situation had become a terrifying race against time. As the day turned into night on March 27th, it became clear that Weltner, the 48-year-old Scoutmaster stuck in Crooked Swamp Cave, was in serious trouble. At 4:45 p.m., as the situation became more serious, the group called for help. They contacted the Blue Ridge Rescue Squad and the National Cave Rescue Commission, or NCRC. The New Jersey State Police, worried about their fellow officer, quickly gathered and arrived in full force. Even though many people were trying to help, it was clear that freeing Weltner would be difficult. By 7:30 p.m., Weltner was starting to lose his ability to think clearly. He was talking in a strange way, a sign that he was getting very cold. The rescuers knew that keeping him warm was the only way to save him. They tried everything. Hot water bottles, heat packs, and a wet sheet were placed near him. But the cold stone of the cave took away the warmth quickly. They brought a small electric heater and a hot air generator, but even these couldn't keep him warm for long. Each passing hour became more critical. Rescuers battled the cold and fatigue, knowing that they were racing against time to save a man whose life was hanging by a thread. Despite all their efforts, by 1 a.m. on Sunday, it had become painfully clear that nothing was working. The cold, damp air of the cave was relentless. Weltner's body temperature continued to drop, and his condition worsened. At 3 a.m., after many hours of trying to free him, there was no sign of life from Weltner. Rescuers were hopeful, but they were losing the battle against the cold cave. By 6 a.m., one rescuer got close enough to feel a little warmth near Weltner's thigh. This meant that he was still alive, but just barely. Desperation set in, and the rescuers decided to take drastic action. They realized that ordinary methods of extraction would not work. So at 6 a.m., they received the go-ahead to use extraordinary means. Their plan was to drill a 20-foot shaft straight down into the cave, aiming to reach a spot just 2 feet from where Weltner was trapped. Time was short, and this was their last chance to save him. For 12 grueling hours, the drilling continued. The sound of machinery echoed through the cave and the surrounding woods as the rescuers worked tirelessly. But when the shaft finally broke through, they discovered that they had missed the correct spot by 10 to 12 feet. The crushing disappointment was felt by everyone. Between 6:30 p.m. on Sunday and midnight on Monday, cavers worked frantically to enlarge the passage leading from the new shaft to Weltner. They used jackhammers, hydraulic rock splitters, and even explosives in a desperate bid to reach him. Each blast, each strike sent shockwaves through the ground, but they made little progress. The clock was ticking, and hope was fading. Finally, by Monday evening, rescuers managed to fit a harness around Weltner's chest. They pulled with all their might, moving him a mere 2 feet closer to the shaft. But it wasn't enough. He was still stuck, and further attempts proved fruitless. At midnight, the heartbreaking decision was made. The only way to retrieve Weltner's body was through quarrying, meaning removing the surrounding rock piece by piece. At 2 a.m. on Tuesday, the quarrying began. It was a grim task. Blasting, backhoe work, and drilling continued throughout the day and into the evening. The rescuers pushed through exhaustion, knowing that their mission had now shifted from rescue to recovery. Tragically, as they worked to free Weltner's body, he suffered numerous post-mortem injuries from the heavy equipment. Finally, at 11:40 p.m. on Tuesday, after 81 hours of relentless effort, Don Weltner's body was recovered. His death marked the end of one of the most grueling cave rescue attempts in New Jersey's history. Dr. Lucien Fletcher from Newton Memorial Hospital officially pronounced him dead at 10:45 p.m., and his body was taken to the hospital for an autopsy. When Don Weltner's body was finally removed from the cave, rescuers discovered the heartbreaking reason that he couldn't be freed earlier. A piece of rock behind his right hip had acted like a keystone, locking him in place. Even after quarrying away most of the rock around him, a come-along tool was still needed to fully release him. In hindsight, it became clear that all previous attempts to pull him free were doomed from the start. Efforts to keep Weltner warm were made, but they were not enough. The focus had been on freeing him quickly, which seemed like the right decision at the time. However, some now believe that if keeping him warm had been the main priority, perhaps with a powerful hot air blower, he might have survived longer. This thought is not meant to criticize the rescuers, who worked tirelessly, but rather to highlight lessons for future rescues. Throughout the rescue, the local community came together to support the rescue teams. Meals were prepared at the town's only firehouse and brought to the site 3 times a day. Residents donated eggs, meat, and vegetables, hoping to provide comfort to the exhausted rescuers who worked tirelessly to save a man trapped beneath the earth. Ultimately, the responsibility for the accident rested with Weltner himself. He was known to be adventurous and fearless, often taking on challenges that others avoided. He loved the thrill of pushing through tight, difficult spaces. Several factors likely contributed to his decision that day. The excitement of the hide-and-seek game, a desire to prove himself after failing to get through a narrow passage earlier, and perhaps a misunderstanding about how dangerous the crawl really was. This tragedy also highlights an important point about caving. Caution and good judgment must always come first. Caving is not a game, and pushing beyond one's limits can be deadly. What goes into a cave does not always come back out. Instead of teaching daring, the focus should be on teaching safety, patience, and knowing when to turn back. Don Weltner's story is a painful reminder of the risks involved in exploring the underground world. It is a lesson in bravery, but also in the importance of knowing our limits. He was laid to rest at St. Rose of Lima Cemetery in Freehold Township, New Jersey. But his memory serves as a lasting reminder of the dangers and responsibilities that come with cave exploration. Sloan's Valley Cave is a little-known cave system in south-central Kentucky. Despite being little known, the system does have a small community of rabbit fans. Local officials say that visitors in small numbers come every weekend. In fact, there's even a Facebook community called Sloan's Valley Cavers dedicated to the cave system. What makes the cave so special, and why do so few people know about it? It's a question we'll look to answer as we explore the caves together during this video. But I can tell you one thing. In November of 2006, Sloan's Valley Cave was anything but unknown. In fact, it was the site of a horrific accident that brought it attention from some of the world's largest news outlets. But we'll get to that. First, let's learn a bit more about this cave and where it's located. Sloan's Valley Cave is in a pretty rural area. Kentucky's 2 major cities, Lexington and Louisville, are roughly 100 and 150 miles away, respectively. To get to Sloan Valley, you have to drive down Route 27 and get off the highway somewhere between 10 and 20 miles after you pass through Somerset. Somerset is really the last place along the highway you could reasonably describe as a city. That is, until you eventually cross the border and get to Knoxville, Tennessee, which will take you about another 2 hours. Everything in between, in this roughly 130-mile expanse, is very spread out and mostly forest. The main landmark is the Cumberland River, a major waterway that winds horizontally through the state and provides water for many of the area's residents. So that in itself is one reason why Sloan's Valley Cave so often slips under the radar of the general public. With the exception of about 3 people and maybe a few cows, it's far away. People don't know about it because they simply have no reason to. But another explanation behind the cave's obscurity is the fact that it has such a passionate and small group of fans. Those who know about the cave and treasure it as a beautiful location in nature seem to relish the fact that it is so unknown and so untrammeled by people. Cave enthusiasts worry about vandalism, littering, and other nuisances that would result from the location of the cave becoming common knowledge. While doing the research for this video, I was able to uncover some useful information about the specific area that the cave system is located in, but out of respect for those who want to help preserve the cave, I've decided not to disclose that information here publicly. What I will tell you is that the main entrance to the cave system is located on private property and that it is relatively close to a landfill. That's important, because it means that for decades, the property owners have been having problems with pollution at the site, even without the location getting many visitors. Runoff from the landfill has previously been accused of polluting the waters of Lake Cumberland. In the 1990s, the property owners had a pond on their property tested for contamination, and allegedly tried to pursue legal action against the landfill with little success. Although it appears to be fairly clean and well maintained in the photographs I could find, the main entrance to Sloan's Valley Cave is called the Garbage Pit, which can hardly be a coincidence. But even if the name is inspired by an excess of waste trickling into the cave entrance, there's no way the waste could infiltrate the whole cave. And that's because this cave is huge. Sloan's Valley Cave is a 24-mile system that eventually runs into the Cumberland River. Explorers find room after room after room, all full of stalagmites, stalactites, draperies, columns, seemingly any kind of formation that a caving expert could think of. Many stretches of the cave are also quite dangerous. Perhaps the most dangerous, and the one that drew nationwide attention back in 2006, is the stretch called Screaming Willie's. It's not exactly clear who Willie is, but it's definitely clear why he would have been screaming. This is a route to exit the cave, and it is 60 feet of almost completely vertical cave wall. Your reward for successfully scaling the wall is daylight, but most prefer to take an alternate route to exit the cave, leaving Screaming Willies for the real daredevils. Treacherous sections like this, along with the marvelous array of visual features, make this cave a hidden gem for those who know how to find it. Sloan's Valley is particularly appealing to experienced cavers who know how to navigate its complex passages and appreciate its structural diversity. Experienced cavers like Edward Martin. When Edward Martin arrived at the entrance to Sloan's Valley Cave in 2006, it wasn't his first time. At 40 years old, Martin had earned himself something of a reputation for exploring dangerous and daunting places such as caves. Martin actually lived more than 2 hours away in Cincinnati, Ohio, but his attraction to the rugged challenge of an underexplored underground cave was enough to draw him across state lines. In November of 2006, a group of 7 people, including Edward Martin, traveled to the remote location where the entrance to Sloan's Valley Cave can be found. Martin probably would have been the leader of the group. Friends later said that he had been coming to the spot regularly for more than a decade. He would have known every nook, every cranny, every tip and trick for navigating your way down and navigating your way back up again. Now, there's something about this story that makes it notably different from most other stories about caving gone wrong. In most stories, there's either some kind of a malfunction with the equipment or some kind of freak accident that the cavers simply would have never expected. But in the case of Edward Martin and the 6 friends who he took to Sloan's Valley Cave, things were different. They made the decision to free climb. In other words, without ropes. In a 24-mile cave system, that's a pretty bold decision. Inside the cave, you are, of course, in total darkness, save for whatever light source you happen to bring. In south-central Kentucky, in a cave that connects to a major river, you're also in the presence of moisture. The cave even experiences regular flooding, and pools of water are a common encounter. So, it's slippery, it's dark, and it's full of steep walls, long drops, and jagged rock formations. I think it's safe to say that relying solely on the support of your own hands and feet in this place demonstrates extreme confidence and familiarity. Edward Martin must have felt that he had been here so many times and knew the cave so well that it would be no problem to casually explore it without strapping in. That proved to be a fatal mistake. The group entered the cave around 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. Despite what surely must have been some nerve-wracking moments, they were able to successfully explore the cave without ropes for about 2 hours, and they would have had lots to see in that amount of time. After passing through the previously mentioned garbage pit that greets visitors at the cave entrance, cavers descend to reach an enormous space called the lake room. There's an arch in this room high enough for an adult to stand underneath. Crossing this massive room would have been a real challenge without ropes. The floor is usually very silty and it is always steep. Once you traverse the lake room, you move further into the cave towards a distant room called the Oasis. Along the way, you'll see every kind of cave rock formation you can find in a textbook. You also might see bats hanging from the ceiling and albino crawdads swimming in the various pools. 24 miles is more than the distance from downtown Manhattan to past the Bronx. Exploring all of that inside a cave in a single day is quite literally impossible. Martin and his friends seemed content with a casual visit, at least for that day. But as they started making their way back out of the cave, they eventually reached a point of disagreement. 3 people in the group wanted to take the easier route out of the last bit of the cave, which makes particular sense given that they were all working without ropes. But the other 4, including Martin, wanted to brave the 60-foot ascent known as Screaming Willies. Rather than force anyone to go against what they were comfortable with, the group decided they would split up. The 3 would go off and follow the different exit route. Martin and the 3 remaining others would climb up Screaming Willies. Martin volunteered to go last. Now, he may have been the most experienced of the 4, so it's possible he did this so as to offer advice and support to the other 3 who would climb before him. One at a time, they made their harrowing journey up the slope and towards the late afternoon above ground. One at a time, they slowly but surely made it. Finally, all 3 of Martin's fellow cavers had made it to the top. Martin was now the only person in Sloan's Valley Cave, and the only one left who needed to make the climb. He started making his way up the slope. 60 feet is a long, long way in these conditions. With very little light, no safety harness, and nothing but cold, damp rock formations, it's the equivalent of climbing up a 5 or 6 floor apartment building and trying to get to the roof. The relief of making it is hard to imagine, and probably what drives ambitious cavers to attempt it in the first place. But tragically, Screaming Willies had other plans for Edward Martin that November afternoon. At around 20 or 30 feet up the climb, Edward Martin slipped. All at once he went crashing and tumbling down, hitting rocks along the way, and eventually landed on his head and shoulders against the cave floor. His 3 friends who were waiting for him at the top must have heard this happen, and it would have been immediately obvious that 911 needed to be called as fast as humanly possible. The local county sheriff's office received a distress call at exactly 6:36 p.m. that evening. From the moment the call was put in, it would be about 3 additional hours before 40-year-old Edward Martin would be pronounced dead. His cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma, which he suffered during the fall. According to the chief deputy coroner, people were known to suffer injuries in Sloan's Valley Cave. Others were known to get lost in its enormous expanse of channels and caverns. But to his knowledge, Edward Martin was the first and only person to have died in the cave. And on the face of it, it seems like there isn't much to unpack in terms of what went wrong here. Martin and his friends were exploring a dangerous cave without the necessary safety equipment, and so, when he slipped on a particularly dangerous section, there was no rope to catch him. But there is another important lesson in this tragic story. Ultimately, there was a reason why Edward Martin and his friends went into this cave without ropes. They were confident they could do it. They, or at least Martin, had been to the cave several times before. It felt familiar to them. And familiarity can sometimes obscure the presence of danger. It's not that prior experience doesn't count for anything, it counts for a lot. Having been to the cave before and having considerable experience with caving in general definitely made the likelihood of Edward Martin having an accident less likely.